G'day guys, welcome back to Aussie Arvos. Today I'm going to give you a rundown on everything that's been happening on the Patrol. So, obviously the state that Victoria's in at the moment, we haven't been able to get out and go anywhere and use these things. So what have we been doing? We've been in the shed, modding them. Today I wanted to do a video, just a basic rundown on everything I've done since I bought the car. So I'll try and cover everything. If you have an old 4B like this, you probably understand that there's a few things you just forget you did. So we're going to start from the front, work our way back, and hopefully I don't miss anything. Alright, so the first thing that's sticking out since you saw the car last is the OCAM roof rack and awning. We did an install on that. It's on their YouTube channel. If you guys would like to check that out, feel free to jump over to the OCAM YouTube channel and have a look at that. But let's get into a few of the more subtle mods that you may not have noticed. Well, we'll start right at the front and we'll work our way back. Starting with the spotties. Now, you've probably seen our video on these. These are Supernova Hybrid 8.5s. If you want to check out the video on that, there's a whole review on them, but I'm overall really happy with the light output. They're awesome. So, working back. On the inside of the grille, something a bit more subtle. This is just an upgraded auto cooler, something that I thought I would like to have on there, more so for running the bigger tyres. Factory, the auto cooler runs through the radiator. I'm not a huge fan of that. If it splits a core, it'll put water into your auto and vice versa. Auto fluid and coolant don't really mix, and it's a good way to wreck an auto really quickly and ruin a trip. So I've just run cooler lines out through the front, auto cooler behind the grille there, got a thermo fan to go on that, and yeah, that keeps everything cool. I've also fitted an auto temp gauge, which we'll get into when we get back there. Other than that, under the bonnet, a few more little things. Carby tuning, which you've seen in a more recent video. Just maintenance things, belts, hoses, all that sort of stuff. Thermostat, checked out the water pump. Viscous hub, which is a thing a lot of people forget and is very common in old Patrols to fail. This car was having issues where it'd idle, you could idle it all day, it wouldn't get hot. But as you started to load it up, even if you were at highway speed, it'd start to get warm, and I couldn't really hear the fan. If you've driven a car with a viscous fan, you can generally hear it start to drag and pull in as you go up a long hill or something. As the engine gets warmer, you'll hear the fan start to whir a bit. It wasn't doing that. And then I checked it by, the way you can check these is, this isn't particularly hot now, but if you get the engine so it is hot, and you can still free spin, like see that's got a bit of load on it now. If you can still free spin the fan when the engine's hot, that fan hub isn't working. So that's a genuine replacement. Bang that in there. Had the radiator split and flushed, just for peace of mind more than anything. The coolant that was in it was pretty much dam water, as most old 4Bs are. So had that flushed and checked, that's all good. As many early cars tend to have issues that are neglected with brakes. I was having a look down here one day and noticed that there was brake fluid leaking out of the master cylinder. It's a common issue. There's basically a seal in the backside of the master cylinder which your piston slides in and out of, and they start to weep, generally with age more so than anything, and it just weeps, and you'll notice the paint will be missing under the brake master cylinder. That's probably the easiest way to tell. Generally they go for a long time before it's picked up. So that paint was all gone underneath the brake master, and the whole brake booster was pretty much just surface rust. All the paint was missing off that. So that's a new brake master. Back in the day they used to rebuild them. These days it's cheaper just to buy a whole new brake master. Buy an alloy as well. If you're going to machine them, you got to sleeve them. It's a big pain. If they were hundreds and hundreds of bucks, it'd be worth it, but for the price those go for nowadays, it's easier just to replace one. I also, obviously, because I am who I am, I wire-wheeled the brake booster back to bare metal and resprayed that, just factory black, and had some paint mixed up to cover the rust patch that was there underneath, so that's all been primed and repainted under there, so it's not rusty anymore. Also in this corner, you'll get the camera in there in a minute and see I've put in a dual battery controller, which we'll get back to. That's in the back, we'll get to that later. So that's just feed off the main battery into the dual battery controller through a fuse, out through and back to the back of the car. It's also feeding another fuse box over the other side there, which we'll get around to. This is just an accessory fuse box. Now this is running off the second battery, so the cable that comes out of the dual battery controller to feed to the second battery is feeding this fuse box. This loop is just spare wire for future that goes into the cabin, so I don't have to try and drag more wires through later. I think that's something that a lot of people should look at, that a lot of people don't when they're setting up a 4B, is they'll just run, and I see it a lot fixing auto electrical issues with 4-wheel drives. They'll drag one wire through when they need something here, and then another one over there, and drill another hole, run one there, and you end up, when you go to find a fault, with 14 different wires running 14 different directions. Whereas if you just run a loom with a few spares, at least it's slightly future-proof, that if you want to add more lights or anything later, all you got to do is hook up both ends of the wire. At least it's run through into the cab. So that's for future. All that's running off that at the moment is the spotties. Other than that, under the bonnet, she's all pretty much the way it came still. Just, yeah, general maintenance stuff, plugs, leads, oil change, checked out the distributor cap, all that. As I said, we had the carby built and that's been dyno tuned, and the gas, so that's all good. And yeah, that's about it under the bonnet. So something, if you watch the lift video, we did talk about it, but we didn't do it at the time, is this adjustable drag link and steering dampener. Now, I left the factory drag link and factory steering dampener when I did the lift. Just didn't really, I always planned on doing it, I just didn't do it at the time. Nathan at Treadworks hooked us up with this. That's a road safe drag link, adjustable obviously, and a Fulcrum Formula steering dampener, which has, it definitely feels different in the steering. What a steering dampener does is you're essentially adding, I suppose, a little bit of weight to the way the car steers. Not in a bad way though. If you drive a car without one, you'll notice that basically every small change in the road surface, it'll try and drag, or every rocks, stones, that sort of thing, it'll try and shake. It's like, feels like driving a buggy or something, you know, the steering's very direct. Whereas this sort of softens everything up, makes the car track a bit easier without you having to constantly correct it. It's all about just making it steer easier. The rest of the lift kit's been performing awesome, so that was the only real addition to it so far. I'm still looking at doing extended sway bar links at some point. I haven't got around to doing them yet either, but that's definitely on the cards, which again, that's no real issue on road. That's more of an off-road thing, just to gain a little bit more flex out of it, as I'm pretty much topping out the front sway bar links at this point when it tries to go full flex. Not a major issue. The amount of times that you're actually going full articulation, or that I am anyway, it's not really causing any issues. But yeah, so since the lift kit, that's about it for suspension. Speaking of the lift kit, if you guys haven't seen that video, just scroll on down, you'll be able to find it. We installed a Fulcrum Formula 2-inch lift kit with King springs. It's got 50 to 100 kilo fronts and 300 rears. Constant loads, which are to account for that bar obviously doesn't weigh 100 kilos, but I plan on in the future putting a steel bar and a winch on the front. No big rush, but at some point it'd be nice to do that. And with everything I've got going on in the back, there is a little bit of weight, mostly due to it's got a 125 litre gas tank in the back, which is obviously heavier than a standard fuel tank in these. Bigger rear wheel, not that that's a major issue. You know, fridge, second battery, eventually want to put a drawer setup and that sort of thing in there. So it's all something to think about when you're selecting springs. But yeah, so speaking of the lift video, we obviously also installed these bad boys at the same time. The Windforce Catch 4s in 33 by 12.5s. They're what they call an AT2, again, and more an aggressive all-terrain than a mud terrain. And people are always going, oh, you know, muddies, 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 muddies. I was talking to someone a while ago who's been forward driving for a long time, and he said, think of any trip that you've done, any 4B trip, besides going to Talangi and throwing your Patrol in a puddle full of mud and spending 4 hours trying to get out of it, breaking everything. Besides that, think of any trip, and in general, 95% of that's on the road. Be honest, you go up the Cape, you know, how much of that is on asphalt before you get there, and where do you want to be more comfortable? Do you want to spend maybe there's a 50 metre patch where you have to use a winch to get up, where you could have driven if you had a more aggressive tyre. Is that worth driving 20 hours listening to the endless drone of a real mud terrain, you know? I mean, each to their own, that's, I think, but people are very quick to drop that you got to have muddies to go anywhere sort of thing. I just think, before you buy a tyre, look at where you want to drive and what you want to achieve with it, and actually think about it, rather than just getting that because that's what your mate said you should have, or that's what the internet said you should have. Think about it, think where you want to drive, what you want to do, and go from there. These have been performing really well on road. We did have a little bit of an off-road trip in a break between lockdowns here, where I got out and actually was able to use them, and I was super impressed. Obviously, it's not really any sort of comparison to the road terrains that were on there, but for an all-terrain, they seem to handle the mud pretty well. Like, I was very impressed. Didn't have to wear down, and did a few tracks that were not particularly, nothing crazy, but definitely, you know, using them. And I was really impressed with how well they handled in the mud. And on road, they're great. Wet, dry, seem to, yeah, steer really nicely. Again, it's a GQ Patrol, it's not a race car, so I drive accordingly, but I haven't had any issues with them on road. They handle really well. So, moving further back, the DIY custom sliders. These have been performing, well, I mean, perfectly as steps. We haven't really been able to get out and do any sort of gnarly tracks, so I haven't been able to test them in that way. They still look great. The Dominator paint's holding up awesome. I was only saying the other day, it seems to stay clean. It's like dirt doesn't really stick that much to it. I guess that's down to how slick the paint is. But as you can see, they've been on there a while. I live on a dirt road and everything seems to get stone chips, but these seem to have held up really well. So those are going awesome. I'm keen to actually get out there and do some trips and put them to good use. So, coming up to roof level. You may have noticed the old worn out alloy roof rack's gone. It was just a cheap second handy that I bought originally to put on there. I found that it was quite a short roof rack. It was more of a 3/4. Probably good for like a short wheelbase patrol or something like that, but I wanted a longer roof rack and something that looked this good. So this is an OCAM alloy roof rack and it is awesome. It's been on there probably a few months now. I've had the swag and all that up there, of course. And the thing I noticed when we put it on is weight. So this is a much bigger roof rack than the one I had on there and yet didn't weigh anymore. I think it only weighs about 22, 23 kilos, which for a roof rack that size I think is really impressive. Super solid. It's got heaps of bracing in it, but because it's all made out of alloy, you're saving on weight. Also the awning, which has been awesome. I've had that out in the rain and it's performed really well. Super happy to have that on there on the side of the car that I plan on sort of using for all the camping when we get out there a bit more and use it, yeah. Okay, so after I added the roof rack, I had a blank space on this side and I wasn't sure whether to add another awning or... I didn't really need more roof cover. What I did need is water carrying, and I thought a solar shower. Actually, I stole Patrick's idea. He had the idea for a solar shower and I thought, you know what, that's a good idea. So I made this up. This is a 90mm PVC stormwater pipe, as all good things are made out of. It's just fixed cap at the front end, added a angle at the rear here just to drop the outlet down below the bottom level. Screw on cap on the back, fill point on the top, stainless hose clamps to hold it to the side of the roof rack, and that'll hold just on 15 litres. Yeah, I think it came up pretty clean for what it is. I mean, there's about 25 bucks of pipe and fittings, so it's no real major investment. But I think to carry 15 litres of water, you know, go away for a week and maybe have a shower once or twice would be very luxury. So yeah, glad to have that up there. The EMU wing still going strong, haven't had any issues with water leaks, anything like that, and this has been getting a fair bit of use. I've been mucking around just doing little jobs and that around here, and it's great to work out of and chuck all your tools and that in there. I have got a bit going on in there now, as you can see, but yeah, we'll get into the interior now and we'll work our way back. So, moving into the interior of the Patrol, what have I done? It's all still relatively standard in the front here, and that's the way I like it. I don't want to be hacking up too much stuff. But there's been a few little things, such as USB ports in the center here, just driving light switch, that's all just, you know, run-of-the-mill sort of stuff. I've added a gauge pod up here, which has got my gas gauge and auto temp, which is an addition, as I spoke about before. Wholesale Autos do a kit for that, which mounts your auto temp gauge into the hot side line, into the banjo fitting on the side of the auto. Comes with a wiring loom, up to a VDO gauge, and then you can just mount that wherever you like in the cab. I wanted to run an auto temp gauge more so because I'm running a bigger tyre. Not that they're anything crazy anyway, but bigger tyre on a hot day, if you're towing a trailer, anything like that, I just want to know what the auto's doing, that it's not getting too hot. Or you're on a beach or a bush track or something like that where you're really loading it up. It's just nice to know that you're not cooking anything, you know, especially after you put that much time into rebuilding it. You want to know you're looking after it. I made a little gauge pod up here, which is alloy sheet, TIG welded by a mate, shout out to Greg, and I painted that in, it's actually painted in underbody black, and then over the top of that in the closest grey I could find to the dash colour in rattle cans at my local Mitre 10. Alright, GQ things. It actually matched pretty well. The reason I did it in underbody first was just to get the texture and then colour over the top of that. I've redone all the gas wiring under the dash as it was horrid, to say the least. Just, yeah, 80s half-hour gas install stuff. Scotch locks and tape and nasty. Anyway, that's all gone now, so that's done properly. I've added a bit of security into that as well. Just gas changeover switch and primer, that's all standard. Still factory stereo for now, but that's something that I do want to look at in the future because that it makes sound, but not particularly good sound. Moving over to the passenger side, I've added a fire extinguisher bracket that I've fabbed out of a bit of alloy sheet there. I think fire extinguishers and first aid kits are something that I think every four-wheel drive and more likely every car should have in them. It's one of those things that you really don't need it until you really do. And also, if you are going to mount a fire extinguisher in a car, make sure it's somewhere where it's actually secure and easy to get at. So that's easy and quick to grab, release out of there, as well as being secure enough that if you were unfortunate enough to roll a car or stack it, that it's not going to fly and hit you in the head. Those weigh a kilo, but a kilo of steel. So that could do some damage in the event of an accident, so make sure it's actually mounted somewhere where it's not going to come out. Other than that, luxurious sheepskin seat covers at the grand expense of $30 each, I know, right, are a major feature, and that's about it in the front of the GQ here. So, moving into the back of the Patrol, here is where the magic happens. I've added a second battery, as you can see. It's an Optima yellow top, which is around 75 amp hour. The yellow tops are a AGM, but they're not exactly like a regular AGM. These are a spiral cell, as you can tell. They look a bit funny to look at, but it basically means that the tubes are all individual cells rather than being plates. So rather than stacked plates like a regular battery, these are spiral cells, which is an Optima sort of design, I suppose. It's supposed to be better for off-road, vibrations, that sort of thing. It doesn't tend to fail as often, and everyone I've basically spoken to about them seems to love them. These can go under bonnet, but with most AGMs it's best to keep them away from heat. And with the way these are set out under the bonnet, I didn't particularly like the dual battery mounts being so close to the exhaust anyway. Not in a fire hazard sort of way, just any battery I don't think should be getting baked every day. If you want it to last, it's a good lifespan. Putting it next to a set of extractors or an exhaust manifold probably isn't the way to go. So yeah, by putting it in the back, I'd keep it out of the elements a bit, and I've managed to fit it in pretty well between the fridge, which is a new addition, and the back of the seat. It just clears. These are, for all the people that are about to comment, these are a sealed battery, and therefore does not need to be in a contained box and can be inside the cabin. Does not leak like a regular lead acid battery, does not vent into the cabin, so that's all safe. But that is something to look at if you are looking at putting a battery in your car. Make sure it's something sealed. You can't just get a regular lead acid and put it in here. The gas that comes out of them is A, dangerous for you, and B, explosive if it gets enough of it going in the cabin, which is less than ideal. But yeah, other than that, basic feed wire from the dual battery isolator up the front, which is basically just a voltage sensitive relay. Real basic stuff. Runs back to here into a fuse to protect that cable. Something that people tend to miss out on when they're setting up dual batteries is they won't fuse it, or they'll just fuse one end. You've got a battery at both ends, so fuse both ends. That cable is then protected, running through the body, feeds into the second battery here, and then feeding out of it we've just got a little fuse box down here, which runs a light strip, which I'll show you in a minute, a 12 volt outlet down there, which the fridge is plugged into. This is just your earth lead, and you've also got an Anderson plug, which I can use for a controlled solar input or any sort of output that wants an Anderson plug. So how have I mounted that battery? Well, the fridge and the battery are both mounted on a sheet of checker plate that I fabbed up myself. This is bolted through all existing bolt holes, so I didn't drill any holes in the car. It's running a rail along the front here, which is basically a U-shaped bit of channel, which mounts to 4 bolt holes along the front, and then there's about another 6 that the plate under the fridge all pick up. So it's definitely secure. None of that is moving anywhere at all, as you can see, which is again something that's important. I think if you're going to put a battery or a fridge or anything heavy like that in the back of your car, make sure that it isn't just rolling around, gonna fly and hit you in an accident or anything like that. So yeah, that plate's all fabbed up and no holes in the car. That's the dual battery which is powering the fridge, but access to the fridge, most importantly. Right, side access through the engine wing. Bang, straight in. Now when I made this bracket, this is something that is important. Clears the back of the roof there, does not rub on the roof lining, all right? And obviously opens over center so that it's not trying to fall on your head while you're getting into the fridge. I got some cold ones in there, as you always should. That's about all that's in there at the moment. The fridge is an ALDI fridge. I bought it a while back. They were on one of their special, special buy things. And it's been in there, it's been running for, I want to say, a month, maybe two. And I haven't had it hasn't missed a beat. It's got everything you really want. I mean, it cools down quick. It's even got an app on your phone. You can Bluetooth to it and do all that sort of jazz. But yeah, no, it's been going really well. So it fits in there surprisingly good. I think it's a 65 litre, but it's a bit lower and wider than a standard sort of size. They are a C-Cop compressor, so at least that's good. But I can't fault it. I mean, for the price, I think it was like 680 bucks or something, which for a car fridge I think is pretty reasonable. And that's been running off the dual battery for months. So access to that through the EMU wing, super easy. And I've added a LED light strip up there on a little dimmer, so you can switch that. The other thing with that is, I've left this, as you probably see hanging down. When you open the awning, you can run the other 3 light bars, just plug straight into there, and then you can light your whole campsite off that one switch, which is conveniently located above the fridge. Now, moving into the back.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
That's new, you like that?
I do like that.
It's from Survival.
Wow.
Yeah, so in the back of the Patrol, everything is relatively standard anyway, but that's the same plate I was talking about earlier, so that runs right through and supports both the fridge and the battery. Fridge has got these little bits of right angle under each corner of it and a strap tying it down at each end, so don't move. And yeah, bolted through all factory bolt holes in the floor. I didn't go drilling holes in anything. I'm just not into that sort of thing. So no hackage to fit that. I've added a survival first aid kit. Again, as I said before, fire extinguishers and first aid kits, you should have one. If not you, one of your mates is bound to injure themselves doing something silly on a camping trip at some point. So good to have it when you need it. Other than that, in the back, just some general stuff. I've just got some jump leads and belts, hoses, things to pack when you're going away on a trip. Belts, hoses, water. I've got some ATF there just in case. Just because I had it in the shed. And that sort of thing. Yeah, a little bit of hose for my solar shower there. And that's about all that's going on in the back here. Alright, so that's about it on the Patrol for now. In terms of future mods, there's things I want to look at. Camp lights, roof lights of some sort. Maybe a stereo at some point, although that's not a major priority. A snorkel, which I've got underway at the moment. I'm just trying to bring myself to cut a hole in a perfectly good guard. And at some point, a steel bar and a winch, as I mentioned earlier, would be a big improvement. But yeah, that's about it for now. I'm just happy to drive it around and keen to get out there and actually use it as soon as we can. So yeah, cheers guys, and we'll catch you in the next video.